This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you like underground music, movies, and more, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed merch, vinyl, CDs, and more. Plug in the discount code 10OFF, TENOFF, for a 10% discount at portlanddistro.com. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. This week, I'd like to welcome Katy Irazzary of Season of Mist to the Everything Went Black podcast. I met Katy when Toombs first started working with Season of Mist, and she turned out to be one of the cooler people that works at the label. And the label is filled with really cool people, so the fact that Katy ranks as a cooler person amongst cool people is pretty cool. So there you go. Anyway, Katy and I talk about a lot of different stuff. I've always been interested in the world of PR, only having dealt with PR on the band side of things. So it's good to pick her brain about all this stuff. And we also talk about just living in New York, being of Italian descent and stuff like that. But before we get going, I want to shout out the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Of course, I'm referring to Brandon Legion of the Horror Wolf 666 podcast, our mutual friend Jackie Smith of Into the Necrosphere, the first out of two extreme music podcasts I listen to now on a regular basis. Of course, this is Everything Went Black. On Thursday, I return with co-hosts Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid for Necromaniacs. We talk about horror movies and horror-adjacent stuff as well. On Sunday, the Lord's Day, Carl Hikara comes at you with Soul Knocks for all things blasphemous, esoteric, and arcane. If you want to support the podcast, please sign up for the Patreon. You can join and support this show for as little as $1 a month. That entitles you to all the bonus material, which there's lots of right now. We have Long Shadows, a show that I do with Ralph Schmidt. We talk about weird fiction, cosmic horror, stuff like that. We have Hollywood Babylon, which is a show dedicated to movie classics. Some of them aren't that old. Some of them are more recent, but mostly stuff from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that's Evan Hopper joins me on that. Also, every week, I throw you guys a staff pick, which could be a movie, a record, book, whatever. Just stuff that I think you guys should know about. And that's it. So, one more thing. I always forget to do this. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Instagram. Everything Went Black podcast. You can find me on Instagram as Michael DC Hill _ separating everything. And so now on with the show. Happy holidays, Katy.
Oh, thank you. You too. It's okay. You don't have to be politically correct. You can wish me Merry Christmas.
Well, I don't know if you're a Christian.
To be fair, I'm not. No, I was raised Catholic. I'm not practicing by any means, nor do I believe in it. But, I don't, to me, I'm like, I don't give a shit. Someone wish me a happy Hanukkah and I'll be like, thank you. Like, it's just nice to someone wishing you a well holiday wish,
Yeah, I was also raised Roman Catholic. So,
the struggle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you had good holiday? You get time off from work and all that?
Oh my God, I did. And that's been such a relief. I needed that this break. I mean, hasn't been super restful because I've just been catching up on like all my like errands and shit that I haven't had time to do. But at least I'm able to mentally not have to deal with work right now or anything. Little things I've been doing here and there, but nothing like overwhelming or crazy.
I have to ask you, do you like pizza?
Yes, I do.
All right, I figured you did since you're from Staten Island originally.
Exactly, of course, yeah. In fact, I'm insufferable because I live out here now, and I'm always like, no, I won't eat that. but I won't eat that pizza.
Do you know who Dave Portnoy is?
Yeah, from Barstool Sports, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he has like a pizza YouTube channel, and
Okay.
so you know, Ninja, my drummer, sent me this thing where he was talking about Santillo's in Elizabeth.
Oh
Are
shit. Okay.
are you familiar with that place?
No, but I know where Elizabeth is. It's
Okay,
like right across the bridge from Staten Island.
yeah. So Portnoy was going off about how great this pizza was, right? And I'm like, I should check this out. I should look into this because I too am a big fan of pizza.
Yes.
I got to be honest with you, man. It wasn't all that great. Furthermore,
Really? Ooh, okay.
furthermore, Portnoy gave a sort of lukewarm review of Spumoni Gardens L&B in Bensonhurst.
What?
Yes.
No. Okay. So now I've eaten there. In fact, when Hai Long was here and they had an off day in Brooklyn, I was literally like, if you guys have time today, go to Coney Island and go to L&B's Spumoni Gardens for lunch before or after you go. Like that is always my recommendation. And like I wish it wasn't like in the middle of nowhere Brooklyn because I would love to fucking take bands there more. Are you kidding me? He gave them what the hell?
Yeah, yeah,
Where is
yeah.
that guy from? He can't be from the
Nah.
East Coast like we are.
So I did a little research because I was like, I was having fun looking stuff up on YouTube,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So I'm like on his channel, and I'm like, all right, this guy obviously doesn't know what the hell he's talking about because that is literally one of the greatest. That's like a wonderland to me. Spumoni Gardens.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. Yes.
Good any time of year, summertime, winter, all 4 seasons. That place totally awesome.
Yes.
So this guy's from Swampscott, Massachusetts. So
See, now his opinion, that's why this explains everything. His opinion is invalid. Like, sorry, but if you're not from like the New York City, not even New York, because I feel like the further you go, like up north, like past like like Long Island, you're also probably don't know what you're talking about when it comes to pizza. And like even New Jersey, I feel there's like a cutoff between like North Jersey and South Jersey, where the further south you go, the more it's like, I don't know that I trust your opinion on pizza. Like even here in Philly, there's places like I don't want to say names because I don't know if they're like mom and pop places and stuff like that, whatever, where everyone in the office raves about. And then we'll get the pizza and I'm like honestly, it's because the equivalent of fucking like Elio's cheese pizza in the microwave. Like this is shit. What are you guys so excited about? Yeah. That's one of the things I miss from New York. It's the pizza. Also bagels. Like you can't get like a big New York style bagel like even flavors like egg bagel. I feel like it's so hard to find outside of New York. Like there's just certain things when I go there, like there's a very specific deli that I will go to and get either just a bagel and just eat it straight up plain. That's how much like I love these bagels, or I will get like a full on bacon, egg, and cheese on a bagel. Because it's like I can't get that out here.
Yeah, now we're talking.
Yes.
There's my go-to spot in Brooklyn is Terrace Bagels. It's
where in Brooklyn is that?
It's on it's in technically it's not Park Slope, but when I used to live in Park Slope, I used to go up there. So it's around Prospect Heights, Prospect Park area.
Yep, I know that area well.
Yeah, it's the best, man. I used to wherever I lived in Brooklyn, if I wanted good bagels, I would take a trip out there. I'd get like a dozen or something like that and have them around,
Yeah, exactly. Like Staten Island doesn't have much to offer, but there's a couple spots that have really good bagels. In particular, it's like the one deli, because I feel like too, especially like growing up, like we knew the good deli and they just stayed consistent, that I will just always go to because it's just like it's nostalgic and it's like I just can't, like living out here in PA, I just can't find bagels on this level.
Yeah, it's
pizza
weird.
too.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Because like when I first left the East Coast, when I got out of college, I went out west, and so I'm like, oh, get a couple slices, something like that. They don't sell it by the slice. Okay, Washington State.
I know there's places that don't sell it by the slice, or you order, and then also when you order a pizza, it's like one size, and it's like not. It's more like a flatbread.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's some places too. Yeah.
And there's the option for like pineapple and all this other fruity stuff on there. Yeah.
Um, oh my God. Listen, I'm not anti-pineapple pizza, but I
Really?
also feel like I'm not. I will fuck with a pineapple pizza. Pineapple, specifically pineapple and some type of pork, like bacon or ham. Like without that second element, I wouldn't fuck with it, but there's something about that like pork combo with the pineapple on the pizza. But even then, you could only get good pineapple pizza if it's good pizza to begin with. Like that to me is the true test of good pizza. Like you could put whatever you want on it, but it's still going to taste like shit if it's not good pizza. Like you could disguise it with pepperoni or pineapple or whatever, but if it's not quality pizza, but if you go to like a quality, like I wouldn't go to get it though at someplace like L&B's because to me it's like their pizza is just so good to enjoy just as is. But certain places like yeah, I mean it's not my go-to, but like I would fuck with it and I have. I will say I'm not anti-pineapple pizza. But like I said, I think it's weird if there's no pork to complement that pineapple on that pizza.
You know that's a good point because oftentimes ham has
Mhm.
pineapple on it, so I can understand that combination working out. Actually,
Exactly. Ham and bacon with that. Even if you get both, yo, trust me, ham and bacon and pineapple on that pizza.
all right. Well, we covered that.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on the show. And PR is a behind the scenes gig, and in some ways, it's kind of a thankless job. Yet, it's crucial to an artist on a label trying to get press, get noticed, like that kind of thing. So, how did you get into PR?
It's really interesting. First of all, you saying it's a thankless job. Funny enough, the first ever interview I went on for to do publicity was with a woman who to this day I consider not just a friend, but still a mentor. She didn't hire me, but to be fair, she was like, "You're way too green. I need someone with experience. I don't have time to train anyone." But she was the one who said to me, "Are you sure you want to do this? This is a thankless job." And funny enough, in some ways it is, but in other ways, I feel I've been really lucky to work in scenarios where I do feel that there's gratitude for the work that I do. But in any case, it definitely was never on my like list of possibilities. To be fair, I feel I had a very limited scope to begin with coming into the music industry of what I really could do. I started in journalism, moved into radio, and through radio, I got into radio promotions. And that's what kind of made me realize I have a knack for this, talking to people and getting them hype on a record because it's genuine, like I'm hyped for this record. So I'm going to share that enthusiasm with you. And I feel that comes through sometimes like, okay, I'm going to hear what this person has to say because, I'm not reading a script. I'm not, just selling a product. I'm telling you to check out something that I genuinely believe in. And, I enjoy doing radio promo. And from there, I then started working at a record label as an assistant. And part of my job was assisting with, we had Carol Kay, who is one of the biggest like names in publicity, like she's done Kiss and, Alice Cooper, which is who we were working with her with at the time. And I'm just like started realizing this job is so, yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's so glamorous in some ways. Handling the guest list, I felt were just a glamorous job. Now I'm like, get away from me. I don't want to handle this guest list. But at the time it was like, some of these things just felt like so exciting and also I'm a really social person. And to me, the social aspect of the job, I felt I thrived at being able to communicate with people and put myself out there. So I realized this is kind of the next step from radio promotion and it just came very naturally. Also writing was a big part of that. And, I've always thought starting out, I felt journalism was a good path. But then when I realized, the amount of work and the amount of pay you get doing journalism and also how little control you have, the better paying corporate kind of job you have, it didn't really become, and while it's something I still freelance and do as a hobby, I realized that couldn't really be a career. So I felt PR gave me that opportunity to also still write and do a little bit of everything. So I started pursuing PR jobs and I eventually got my first job at Adrenaline PR, working there full time. Did that for a year. and then went with John Freeman. And this is actually here at Season of Mist, the first time I've been in a director role or like managerial PR role. And also the first time I've done it specifically for a label and not doing indie. So, but I really just felt it's my calling because it kind of just combines, not to mention I'm also just really organized and can be quick thinking and proactive instead of reactive. So I just feel this is really the job was just kind of my calling and it just kind of came naturally.
Yeah, we worked with Freeman before. I like John. John's a good
No,
guy
he's
to work
great.
with. Yeah.
He taught me a lot. He really did. And and to be honest, I probably would have stayed with him full time if this opportunity hadn't arisen with Season of Mist and just gave me an opportunity to move and work with bands that were a little bit more in my wheelhouse.
I didn't realize that you were also in journalism. I didn't know that about you. I knew you worked in radio, but I didn't realize that you wrote too.
Yes. Matter of fact, last year, and this was probably the last real thing that I had written, with the exception of like maybe a couple of like random listicles for Loudwire here and there. I actually wrote the Alexi Laiho Bodum After Midnight Memorial cover story for Outburn. And I started when I was 17 as a senior in high school as an intern with Metal Edge magazine. And from there, I was also a editor, a web editor at Revolver for a couple of years. So that was a path I had pursued and I had done a lot. But again, like I said, I just feel certain like the more creative and the more leeway you get in certain spaces, it's usually the less money that there is. Because when people want to make money, you need clicks. So they want you to write a positive review about this Metallica record. You can't write a negative one, even if that's how you feel, kind of thing.
Yeah, I dabbled in music journalism specifically for a while, and yeah, it's hard to be honest and make money doing that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like I'm lucky I'm at Season of Mist because I say such inflammatory things sometimes. I'm like, man, the Osbournes would never work with me. Metallica would never work with me, but it's like that's not my world anyway. My world is here with more of like the cult underground kind of music. It's not in the mainstream with those kinds of bands.
When you worked with Revolver, which sort of era of that publication were you working with? Because there's like that inked era. There's like I know Brandon Geist was always like the editor for many years, but there was
Yeah.
like the two different sort of versions of that magazine. There was like the more modern one now, which I think only comes out 4 times a year, and
Hmm.
it relies heavily on videos and like the internet and web based things, and not so much like a tactile magazine. So which era were you involved with?
I was literally there right at the cusp of the transition, funny enough. I came in when they were still operated by New Bay Media, which is where like Guitar World and I forget what else, but a lot of other like big name music magazines. So this is when Revolver, this was actually the first year that they stopped doing the hottest chicks in metal issue. The year I came on, they had the year before was the final one of that. Um, and they were moving, I guess, into a little more of like a hipster, not really. I guess it was like in that weird in between of like they were still more like metalcore and still covering like Slipknot heavily and stuff like that, but we're definitely starting to explore more like Death Heaven and bands like that when I came in. And then within 1 year of me being hired, they switched over, left New Bay, and went to this new media group, Project M. So I was there for the whole transition to where they started to ramp up their digital presence. And in fact, when that happened, I stepped down from web editor, not really down, more like a lateral move. And I became podcast director. And I was in charge of all of their podcast properties and editing those and taking care of producing those and taking care of the content. But then it all kind of fizzled out. And at that point, too, when they started doing less of the digital stuff and my role started becoming obsolete with the podcast, it kind of worked out because then I went full time with Season of Mist and moved to Philadelphia anyway.
Right on. Yeah, I don't even know the last time I think I had anything to do as an artist this time around, not so much as a contributor. They were like in the basement of Inked magazine in Manhattan. That's sort of the last interaction I had with Revolver.
Yes, they were still in that building, I believe, when I can't remember actually where the New Bay building was when I started with them, but then I know when we they made the switch, the building was then somewhere in Dumbo in this like really nice like it was in a WeWork actually.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice, and we had our own studio that for me and Jimmy Hubbard to use for our video and podcast content, which was really sick. So it was really cool, but I guess, things just went in a different direction. I was also there my first year there at the end of like, not even really, it was more like halfway through my first year there was the last ever Revolver Awards, like Golden Gods.
Oh yeah, sort of an end of an era. That, along with the
Yes.
demise of the hottest chicks in metal, definitely a
I know.
transition.
If one of those things could come back though, I'm not gonna lie, I love the Golden Gods.
Yeah, I that stuff was cool, man. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
exactly.
So mostly what you've been doing, I mean, this is all pretty much in extreme music and metal. So what was your entry point into metal? Like what about metal? Like what, you know, why that?
It was definitely like twofold. I mean, growing up, I was a 90s kid, so let's be real. I grew up on like the Spice Girls and NSYNC and Britney Spears. Like but there was like that was my gateway into music. But I always had this really intense passion for music that I always feel was just different than my peers, like obsessive, like and I feel like the energy I still have to this day. And as I got a little bit older and, I wasn't really connecting with that music anymore, I had watched a lot of TRL, which was a music video countdown show on MTV for anyone listening who doesn't know what that is, because it has sadly been long off the air. And I used to watch that a lot for bands like obviously NSYNC and stuff like that. But as I'm watching it, I'm finding I'm more intrigued by this Korn video and I'm more intrigued by this Marilyn Manson video. And these are starting to speak to me a little bit more. I guess too, it makes sense because it's, at like 12 years old when you're right on the cusp of being a teen and being angstier and hormonal and everything. That kind of music spoke to me more. So that was kind of and Linkin Park too, I would say was a big game changer. I actually think that's really the band that I first heard was like, whoa, what is this? This is awesome. And from there, once I started getting into those bands, I have an older cousin who I'm willing to bet you probably know.
Okay.
His name is Jojo Irizarry. Like if you see him, you might recognize him, but he's also like an old school hardcore dude. Like I'm certain you have been in a room with him and probably have crossed paths with him before, because you're totally run some of the same circles, and I know for a fact you have a lot of crossover friends.
Yeah,
But
I'm
anyway,
definitely on the periphery of that scene, though. Honestly, you know what I mean, I'm not really,
true.
like I have friends and bands. I'm not the kind of guy who was at like CBs in the '80s or anything like that. You know what I mean? But
That's fair. Yeah, he
yeah.
was like a L'Amour's guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, then maybe. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like that was more.
So that's
my
what I'm
thing.
saying. He was both. He was like hardcore and metal, and punk. Like he was into all of it, but he was definitely more of like at L'Amour's seeing those kinds of shows.
Okay.
But once he was realized, oh, cousin Katie likes metal, then it was listen to Slayer, listen to the Misfits, listen to Metallica, listen to Sepultura. And he also started feeding me all this music. So I just kind of had like this perfect storm of consuming and discovering a lot of the modern bands through TV, and then that becoming a gateway to discover a lot of the older music. And then I would say, funny enough, again, like kind of tying into TV, I was laughed at like my foray into black metal was watching Viva La Bam with Bam Margera and an
Oh yeah.
episode. And I'm like, what is this song? This is amazing. And I, waited for the credits at the end of the episode and looked at the name of the song, and it was Cradle of Filth. And that was totally my gateway. And I think that's why to this day I usually prefer more like melodic and like atmospheric black metal.
There's a lot to like about Cradle of Filth.
I mean, they're still putting out great music as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned. Yeah.
They're not one of my go-to bands, but I have an appreciation for them just because of the whole like Bram Stoker like vampire like connection,
Yes.
and I always thought that was really cool. And I actually I interviewed Davey and
Really?
yeah, Danny
Donnie?
Phil
Donnie? Yeah.
Donnie. Why did I say Davey?
Danny or Donnie? It's all right.
Donnie.
It's been a long day. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I don't
Donnie.
know. He's British. So when he
Yeah,
says his name, it sounds like he's saying I'm Donnie Filth, but I'm like, I don't, but I say it Danny. So I don't know. One of
yeah,
those.
Donnie Filth. Yeah,
Yeah. Donnie Filth. Yeah.
very very cool guy, and we talked about the occult and like also horror films and like and also music, and he's just like a really really personable dude, and I had a lot of fun talking to that guy.
That's awesome. I gotta say, anyone I know who's toured with him or interviewed him or worked with him in any capacity only have positive things to say about him. I have not met him. Definitely on like on a goal list, especially because in like high school, it was like him and like Marilyn Manson that just covered my binders in school. So it's like that's a goal totally to meet him. But and I've heard that he's extremely cool from anyone I know who's had to work with him.
I could see how Marilyn Manson would be sort of a gateway into like the darker side of music, really. I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, you're watching a music video on MTV, and here's this man, and he's got breasts, and he's in all white, and he's dancing, and it's creepy, and you're like, what the fuck is this? And I feel too, again, like I've always like as a kid, when I had sleepovers with my friends, we weren't watching rom-coms. We were watching Children of the Corn and Friday the 13th. Like I feel like so that there's that spooky element that's always thrilled me, and seeing that incorporated in music. And it definitely was my first foray. I mean, who can forget being a kid and hearing the rumor of Marilyn Manson removing his rib cage to suck his own dick? So I mean, there's things like that. And of course, too, I feel that's the age when I started to become more independent and realizing I'm not the religion. We spoke a little bit about being growing up Catholic. And that was when I started kind of not really starting to reject that. And here comes a band like Marilyn Manson, who's totally the antithesis of how I was raised. And that was also an appeal at Cradle of Filth, because even though their music was definitely more romantic, but all of like and there was all the horror aspects of vampires, there was also this like dark satanic aspect that was really drew me to them.
it's funny you talk about being Christian and Roman Catholic and all that, but Catholics are like, it's kind of a black metal religion, really, if you think about how evil and brutal it is. Like if you go back,
Yeah.
you get into like if you read Milton's Paradise Lost or something like that, which obviously that's about Lucifer's fall from grace into hell, and it's I don't know, like without the context of music, and you just read that as a piece of writing, it's a fucking horror story.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And there's
And
also a lot of stories that are just about like extreme violence, like God telling someone, hey, kill your own son to prove yourself to me. Like, I don't know. It sounds like it could be like a death metal song.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
UFOs and aliens are also in the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
But my grandmother was from Italy, right? So
Mine too, actually. She's from Naples. Where's yours from?
Alberto Bella, which is on
Okay.
the Adriatic, sort of by Rome, on the by the boot
Okay.
heel, sort of.
Further south.
When I was growing up, there was all this like intense, like iconography in her house, and I had a very, very, very close relationship with my grandmother. I mean, she was like, helped raise me when I was a kid.
Right.
And I was always very, very scared of this crucifix that she had. And it was like this very graphic, there's a crucifix, it's like Jesus Christ, like suffering with like the stigmata and the sword sticking out of him and blood. And I was like, that's like one of the things that really was like impressed upon me, this kind of awe, I guess, of like these kind of like supernatural elements and religion and like all this kind of stuff.
That's a very good point. A lot of the imagery of Jesus Christ in particular is extremely graphic. And if you think about it too, so is all the imagery of like who is it, Saint Michael
Yeah.
killing Lucifer. And the same thing, it's always this like also very sexy. A lot of these statues are very sexy men.
Oh yeah, it's always some
And
like
yeah,
guy with abs. He's kind of like a
yeah,
swimmer's build. Very
right, right.
sexy guy. Yeah.
Exactly. Like looks like he's built off like Hercules, which is also true. A lot of these gods have, basically their stories were built upon similar stories told in ancient Greece and Rome and Egypt. Just like, rewritten. And so that's one of the stories where you see like these statues of this really hot Adonis looking man slaying this beast. Like, it's like it's first of all kind of sexy and yes, also like scary and very horror-esque. And there's a thrill to it too, because in a way it's that horror that, when you're growing up, you're told witches don't exist and vampires don't exist and zombies aren't real. But you're not told that that's not real. So I feel there's something about it when you grow up and you believe this is a real horror that could, like a real life demon story that could happen.
Well, just real quick about the art. That was a way for a lot of the artists who were gay to
Yes,
kind of, express themselves.
that's very true.
The male form. And, it's not like in ancient Rome, every single Roman was like shredded, and, it was all jacked and everything, walking around with like a loincloth on or, just like a tunic with a bare
Right.
chest. That was like average people too. I mean, humans are the same now as they were when they were wandering around the savannas and, but yeah, that was like sort of under the guise of a religious iconography, like gay artists were able to like express themselves that way.
That's a very good point. That's very true. I mean, and you look too, like something like, granted, look, you don't always know if they were or weren't, because obviously back then it was a crime in most cases punishable by death. But you even look at like the Sistine Chapel, and it's like that's pretty gay.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
homoerotic, which is kind of an awesome troll job too, if you think about it.
It was kind of
Like here's
funny
this.
because I was thinking like, I'm like, oh man, everyone was like in really good shape back then,
Yeah, also true. Yeah, exactly. It's like, man, there was a lot of sexy men back then. What happened?
Yeah, is it like the diet, the Mediterranean diet or something like that had these guys like pretty good like low body fat, body mass indexes, like that kind of stuff.
Right. True.
Actually, I've told this story before, but the first my earliest cinematic memory is going to see The Exorcist with my parents when I was like 4 or something like
Oh
that
my God.
in the drive-in. So
This
it's
explains a lot.
I you know I just all these years I was like it just kind of things that happen in your life you just kind of take it for granted. You're like, all right, this happened. Not like this
Yes.
happened. This is just like some movie based. It's not like some traumatic event or anything. But
Right.
that and like the seeing The Exorcist and the scary Jesus hanging from the cross like definitely puts a shines a light onto some of my interests. You know what I mean? And would you say that as a growing up with this kind of background? I mean, are you Italian or?
Yeah, yes, yes. So my same like you, my grandmother also my father's mother came from Naples, and she immigrated here, and she also had a part in raising us because when my father and mother got married, she moved in with them. So she lived with us until she got a lot older, and I was like in high school at that point, and then she moved in with my aunt. So yeah, so we're Italian, and culturally too, I would say mostly Italian because of the way she raised us and being around the culture like directly. Where I mean, I'm very mixed, but that I would say is like my primary culture.
Pretty much the same over here. I mean, my
Yeah.
my dad's like family is from some variety of different northern European countries, but For my birthday one year, I was given the 23andMe, kit to check out like what my genetic breakdown was, and actually, pretty much mostly Mediterranean, Italian, that area. So, whatever. Also, a very large percentage of Neanderthal genes too. By the way.
Stop. What's Neanderthal? Like literally Neanderthal?
Yeah, literally.
Get the fuck out. That's amazing. Holy, I've never even heard of that being a thing. That is incredible.
I was.
Amazing.
Have you ever done anything like that? Check out your.
Okay, I have a story. It's so funny because when you brought this up, the Italian thing, I was like, is this a good time to tell this story? You know what? Yes, I'm telling the story because I'm here to entertain. And it is just so spectacularly ridiculous. And I swear to you, this is fucking true. Holy shit. Okay, so same thing like a couple years ago. It was right before the pandemic. So Christmas 2019, my dad got my brother and I DNA tests.
Okay.
So I really wasn't super interested for whatever reason. I even kind of like forgot we even got them, but my brother was really excited and took it right away. So we were at that point, we obviously know my grandmother is Italian and my father's father was from Puerto Rico and he's Puerto Rican. So, and I was particularly interested in this part because the region that his family or our last name is from is actually like in the south of France. So I was just curious if we had like a little French or something or whatever. So my brother takes his test, he gets his results, and everything pretty much checks out. They were very similar, like the stuff on my mom's side was pretty similar there. But he had no Hispanic in him whatsoever.
Yeah.
So we're just like, that's normal that you can actually, have a relative that has something and have it not come up. No big deal. But now the next morning, it's like 6:00 in the morning and my dad is like, call me. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this about? So I call him and the first words out of his mouth are like, I don't think my father's my father. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, what? He was like, yeah. And he tells me this whole thing about, I swear to you, this guy, Tony the Eggman. And his name was Tony the Eggman. And he was from New Jersey and he had a farm and he used to bring my grandma fresh eggs from his farm because she was neighbors with his sister and that's how she met her, or something like that. And my dad said that he had a suspicion growing up that my grandmother was having an affair with Tony the Eggman. And there's all these other anomalies that, like, my father has lighter skin than the rest of his siblings. My father's very athletic. The rest of his siblings are not. My father is definitely, I don't know how to say this politely, like more intelligent, I guess, than like his siblings. Like,
okay.
So there's definitely like anomalies, and even some of his cousins used to joke, you're the milk boy's kid, or the milkman's kid, because he was so different from the rest of the family. So now I'm like, well, you know what? I think there's like a way you could like check like to see if any matches come up. So maybe some matches will give us clues if this is true or not. So we like are war dialing my brother. He wakes up. We're like, you got to check. He clicks the box where you could see matches. And the last name comes up. And that's when my dad was like, yeah, that was that guy's last name.
Oh,
that was his last name. He was like, because it was on his truck. And that was the last name. So that's how we found out.
Wow.
And he's also Italian. Yes, he's also Italian. We're like significantly more Italian than we thought. And he's a little bit Greek, which I think is pretty funny. Because that's something we didn't know. But yeah, so we found out. And then the craziest thing is, as soon as we find out, I tell everyone in the family, like, holy shit. And my aunt is like, oh, we got photos of him. So I go and I'm looking through the photo albums, and my grandmother, not only she has like a ton of photos of this guy, barely any photos of her own husband, but he also looks so much like my father. It was crazy. So we joke that like my grandfather's the Eggman.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what we found out when we just unearthed family secrets. And I feel bad, honestly, for my grandma that she had to live with that secret and take it to her grave with her, because I feel we all, she said it would have been no one's judging her for it, we would have been understanding if we knew. So that's the story. My father has made attempts to reach out to some of the people that have come up, but they're like such distant relatives, and a lot of them like I feel people like take the test. I mean, if it weren't for this scenario, I'd have no reason to like check my inbox on there. I would just take the test, look at my ancestry, what my results were, and that'd be the end of that. I wouldn't be looking back and seeing who's reaching out to me.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works out because you think about when you're in high school science, you're like genetics and all this, and you're like, oh, it's just this even split between your parents, but it's not even that. It's like you can have
That's what you think.
yeah,
Yes,
you can
it's so
inherit
different.
everything from one parent and like just nothing from the other. It's crazy. But
It's
or
so true.
yeah, like I also discovered that I'm like 16% Native American too.
Wow. See, that's also crazy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a pretty significant percentage if you
That
think about it.
that's like a whole person, you know.
It is, yeah,
Basically,
exactly.
that's because I started when that came up. I was like, I looked into it a little bit. I wasn't going to pay, extra money or whatever to figure this out. But they were like, yeah, that's a full on person
Yes.
somewhere in your family tree. And I'm thinking it probably came from my dad's side of the family because his family came over in like the 1800s, and they like worked on
Right.
the railroad, and they were like these roughneck like you know homesteading type of people, and just like these kind of like you know they were around. Some of them settled in the South, and somehow went out west. And my dad showed me pictures of like some of my old relatives when they were young, and they were just like they just looked like trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these like
Yeah.
cowboy like
Oh
kind
my
of stuff.
God.
Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. And
Wild West. Yes, I do. Yeah. Outlaws.
yeah, outlaw types.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I got you.
but yeah, it's just so crazy. So I found all this stuff out, and also that I'm a caveman, and all that kind of stuff.
And that's my favorite part. I didn't even know that was a possibility. Do you ever watch What We Do in the Shadows?
Of course, that's amazing.
It's
I
like
love it.
that episode when Colin Robinson says, "I'm white." And they're like, well, that's impossible. You have to be something. And he just look and it just says white. Like but that's like what the being a Neanderthal kind of reminds me of. Like, damn, they ain't even trying to identify the origin. But it's also like, wow, that's so crazy. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
feel like it's also a rare mix to have all those things. Like I feel especially because of, how few living Native Americans there are now, that's rare. And I feel like being a Neanderthal has to be super rare. So to be both those things, you might be like a medical oddity. Like
I have thought about trying to find out at least like what group, what tribe, because my friend,
yeah.
yeah, like my friend Retta is Native American, and she was like, I was telling her about it, and she's like, you should find out, like, this might be like a whole other thing in your life that you could, like find out about it, learn about, different
Absolutely.
things.
Learn about that. Yeah, of course. I mean, I fully support that and think that would be super rad to figure out where, you come from and embrace that part of your culture.
Yeah, that's for many years. That's been even when I was a young kid. I was read like Robert E. Howard and all these like ancient
Right.
civilizations, like traveling across the ancient world, and this stuff has always really interested me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I feel we have people, especially my mom's side of the family, like multiple family members who are super into this genealogy and tracing our family back and finding out all their origins and everything. And it's really fascinating when you learn some of these things. Like to me, I'm just like, I'll learn through you people. You people can just tell me stories and I'll just listen. But they're really into, and the stuff you find out is interesting. Now, if only we had someone on this side of the family who could find out more about Tony the Eggman and my Eggman blood.
Tony the
It's funny. Yeah. Because it came up part Greek. Like I feel like I was like 7% Greek, and which is funny because my dad was only like 3%. He was like 97% Italian and like 3% Greek. And My way of embracing that culture is now every time I see Sakis from Rotting Christ, I'm like, my Greek brother, I'm part Greek.
Well, that's a good segue into some of the other stuff I want to talk about. Actually, now that you brought up Rod in Christ, uh,
Yeah.
and I'm not just saying this because Season of Mist has been kind enough to release some of our creative output, but I have to say, Season of Mist has always been kind of a go-to label for me, even before our involvement with them when it comes to finding good music and stuff that is dark and sort of atmospheric and grim and you know what was that something that what came first, you working there or your interest in what they're doing? Like, did you seek out Season of
Exact.
Mist?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it did kind of just pop up at like the perfect time, but yeah, I always same thing. Like, really was a big fan of their roster. So to see that listing pop up, it was just like, not only did it come at the right time, like I was in a crossroads where I felt well, first of all, I had to move. I was living in a house that was being rented out with some roommates in Staten Island, and the landlord was selling. So I had to move, and property in Staten Island even had just shot up tremendously. So, especially in the area I needed to live in, which would be close to New York for my commute. So, that was pretty disheartening. And then here's an opportunity to move to Philadelphia where I can afford to live in a one bedroom by myself and to work for a label. I mean, it's funny enough, again, it's the Greeks, like Rotting Christ, Septic Flesh was still on the label at the time, Mayhem was still on the label at the time, Destroyer 666, Solstifier, all bands that I loved. And it was a label I really had been keeping an eye on because I felt like every time I'd be like, oh, let me check this band out, I'd check it out and I'd be like, what label are they on? I'd look, and it was almost always Season of Mist. So, and then coming there, of course, I've discovered a lot of other bands that I hadn't been previously aware of that I've completely fallen in love with, like Gadia. Well, to be fair, they were signed after the fact anyway, but I think they're absolutely incredible. Der Wegeiner Freiheit. Just so there's been so many bands that I just wasn't even aware of and didn't even check out that working there now. I'm like, wow, holy shit, how did I not know about these guys sooner? So same like you, where I mean, there's definitely been a big part where it's helped me discover more cool bands on the label, but I was very tuned into what Season of Mist was doing and putting out. So to see that opportunity come up was like a switch. Like I knew when that job listing was posted, like that's where I'm going to work. Like I'm getting this job. Like I'm getting this job. That's where I'm going. Because it was just like there's really the only other label that I would say I really connect with as far as their roster goes, and even not so much anymore, but more so at the time would be Nuclear Blast, because they also had a real good amount of black metal bands. On top of that, I love all of the like old school thrash bands, and they have all of them. But other than that, it would be Season of Mist. There's
Yeah.
really no other label I love that much.
And also, Gordon Conrad has a background in PR too, and he's like I don't know what Gordon's official title is in the label, but
Label manager.
yeah,
As a matter of fact, actually, funny enough, today they were recording this, or this week rather. We're doing a rollout of everyone's like favorite albums of the year. So Gordon is listed as U.S. label manager and I want to say cat wrangler or something like that. But yeah, he's our U.S. label manager. He's basically the only other person above him would be Michael.
oh, right on. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly where I suspected Gordon would fall in the org chart, actually.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I have a long, long relationship with him that goes all the way back into the '90s, actually. And yeah, Gordon's like one of the best there is, and the fact that he has a background in PR and is also running this branch of the company is probably good for you too.
Uh, no, I mean, in some ways, yes, but in other ways, when someone did PR, not even talking 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even someone who did PR 10 years ago, it was such a different landscape than it is now. So unfortunately, there's definitely a blind spot for the era that he did PR in versus now. Obviously, there's a lot of things that still are the same, ideas that he has that are helpful. But if it's, there's just certain avenues that are just completely dead between now and then, and just the way things are done. I mean, you have to think back when he was doing it. I'm not even saying this to be a dick, but like people were still faxing their interviews
Right.
to each other, and print magazines were king. Now in North America, we've got what, like 3, 4 metal print magazines, barely. Um, and everything is web based. So in some ways, yes, it is helpful. Biggest thing that's been a help is really too is connections for a lot of the old timers who are still involved in it now. But that's another handicap where a lot of the people that were active at that time are long since retired. But so it is even like 5 years ago versus what I was doing then versus what I am doing now. The landscape has changed so dramatically. So that's one thing where in some ways it is helpful, but unfortunately not as helpful as you would think just because of the gap in time. I mean, the other day he was telling me a story about um, something with Watain doing like national TV for this like Metallica thing. And he was like, it's when their last record came out. I was like, oh, like 6, 7 years ago. He's like, no, the one before that. I'm like 15 years ago.
Oh,
That
wow.
doesn't help me now. Yeah, the record he was talking about when Watain did this came out when I had just graduated high school. It was like 2007 or 8.
Damn.
So and it's like that doesn't, these opportunities don't exist now as they did back then. But I will say I still appreciate certain old school methods other people don't, like picking up a phone and calling people. Like I know cold calling isn't popular, but in some instances you need to do it. How else are you going to get through to that one person you need to get through to sometimes? So that's something I think that some newer publicists don't, especially ones who haven't learned from older people, don't quite value or understand why it's still important. I mean, you don't have to cold call every single person, but if you're trying to get something in, on Stephen Colbert, yeah, you got to call. Like, you got to
Yeah,
call these people.
definitely. This is
Yeah.
one of the things that, like, I don't know anything about PR. I mean, that's primarily I wanted to ask you onto the show so I can find out. Like, I just know I make a record, I show up and have my picture taken. You say,
Right.
you send
Make a
me
couple
like,
music videos.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's it. And then suddenly I see all this cool stuff show up online, and interviews are in my inbox, or sometimes they're on the phone or a podcast. But I just really don't know how any of this stuff, like the behind the scenes, works with any of this stuff, really.
Well, first of all, you don't need to, do a podcast with me. You are welcome to call me, text me anytime if you have a question. I could talk about this stuff for hours. And I always love talking to you. So don't ever be shy. You could always ask me whatever you want. And, my job definitely differs from the average label publicist in that there's a managerial element in what I do. Most labels will have a product manager who does some of the tasks I do. For example, scheduling and figuring out where the best place for these premiere tracks are, and managing promotional budgets. So that's something we do as well. Figure out what your budget is for ads for this campaign and how we want to allot it. Do we want to use it for ads, or do we want to use it for video, or although I'm not going to lie, that's one of the things I've kind of let fall by the wayside this year, because there's just a lot. One of the biggest primary things as a publicist is definitely pitching. It's a little bit more than just writing a press release and sending it. That's like kind of the first, you cast that net and catch the fish that you can. But then you got to really, get them with the line sinker and send people an email, personalize it, and tell them, kind of goes back to what I was saying. One of the things I like is tell them why I like this band and why I think you would like this band. And doesn't just extend to albums. Tour press is a big part of it. So it's okay. Tunes is a new record coming out. I'm going to promote it to these people, but now they're going on tour. So I can hit up all these people at these regional papers and magazines because they're going to be in their city and maybe get some interest there. So they're two different avenues, because one is more nationalized, whereas the other, being tour press, is more regional. So, oh my God, what else do I do? Writing, a lot of writing. I write all the label copy, like the blurbs. So, any bands listening to this now on the label, if you don't like your blurb on the shop, you can let me know because I'm the one who wrote that. Um, so, ads, well, I actually will only take responsibility for American ad text. I don't, in Europe, other people do that. But press releases, bios in some cases. I mean, that became too much of an undertaking. So we typically hire out, like, as you know, our friend Kevin Stewart Penko,
Oh yeah.
we usually hire him to write yours, and I'm sure we will for the next one. But for bands that are newer, emerging, we don't really have much of a budget for, or they don't really have much of a history to cover. So those are a little bit easier. I'll usually handle those. Writing press releases, collecting all of the press clips, organizing them. Oh my God, visas. I
Oh
have to get all the
man.
press clips organized. Well, Gordon handles the bulk of that, but I got to
Dude,
get the press clips organized for the visa lawyers.
that's been a big problem in 2022. It's
Oh, and
visas.
it's going to get worse. It's
Oh
going to get
man.
worse.
Yeah.
And between us, like, I can't mention names, but there are bands who are not coming here ever again, or at least there's so much fucked up shit going on. So much, but like, that's a conversation you and I will have off the record. You don't even know how bad it is. And I have bands, not, I have two issues. You know, you have bands in Europe coming to us like, we want to come here and tour. It's like, dude, don't, like, stay there. There's a vehicle shortage. There's a visa. Like, we have now bands that are coming here where they're going and saying, I need a visa appointment. And they're getting the visa appointment 6 months after the tour ends. Like, it's just getting out of control. They're become way more expensive. And then touring in general has become way more expensive. And then we have bands here, like, I want to get to Europe. And it's like, stay put. Like, seriously, it is a shit show across the board. Even though you don't need a visa to go to Europe, gas is 10 times more expensive. Vehicles are just as hard to come by. Like, it's a bad scene out there right now.
Yeah, going to Europe, you need to have your people. I mean, I just from my own experience, I have like guys. I have my people over there that I go to for
Right.
certain things. But if you're trying to just be like, this is our first record, we want to tour Europe, and we don't have
No.
anyone to talk to, it's probably best to like maybe sit this one out for a minute. You know?
Absolutely. And you don't want to go on your own either. You want to go as a support act on
Yes.
your first run anywhere. You want to, and that's the way to the natural order of things. Um, because it could get messy. And like you said, you don't have your people there. You're alone in another country. You have to navigate it. It's a lot. You also have to navigate promoters. You want to make sure you have someone with you who, if you can't advocate for yourself, can advocate for you. If you have a promoter that tries to scam you, because unfortunately, if you're a smaller emerging band, it's easier to take a bad deal because you don't recognize that it's a bad deal, or work with someone who other people have on a no-fly list that you're not aware of because you're new and green. And so, yeah, having that support system and people that could guide you when you don't know any better is really important.
Yeah, I pretty much made every mistake you could possibly make in touring Europe.
Well, or some of them, or can you talk about some of them?
uh, well, just a wide variety of experiences over there when it comes to like travel and logistics and hoping we have enough money to pay for everything, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I feel you on that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I'm
definitely
I'm
hard.
same here. Like, I feel like I go to Europe a lot, and even though I'm traveling alone as far as getting myself to the airport, on the plane, and to my destination, I'm never really alone. I always have people there. I feel like if I had to actually navigate these places and situations genuinely on my own, I would absolutely be Natalie Holloway. Like, I would be murdered, or like, it wouldn't go well. I'd just be like lost forever somewhere. It would just be a mess. Like, it's just better. Like, especially in a country where they're not very Americanized and they don't have as much English signage and stuff like that. Like, you try to learn what you can, but let's be real, the older I get, the more weed I smoke, my brain's not retaining like it used to. um and I can only learn so much language. So yeah, I can't imagine being there even just as a solo traveler without some kind of support net of people, especially people who are from there and live there and can navigate the lay of the land. Even something as simple as just needing a restaurant recommendation, it helps to have someone there.
It's funny you mentioned street signs because the first time that I ever went to Eastern Europe, like
Oh no.
Poland or Czech Republic, uh, when in the countries like Germany, France, Italy, the language has a base in Latin, so you can kind of, you can figure out where you're going. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, you can, disseminate, figure it out. When
Yes.
when you go to Eastern Europe, it's a completely, there's all these fucking consonants like next to each other and weird accents and everything, and you're like, am I looking at like a street sign or the name of the town, or is it a restroom or what? I couldn't make heads or tails.
Right. And it's also hard because if you wanted to say like type the word into an app, sometimes they're using Cyrillic
Yeah.
or letters that are not on an American keyboard, which is a thing too. Like you don't think about until you like, you're in France and you look and you're like, oh my God, that is not an American keyboard. Like because they
Yes.
have different letters and stuff they need to use. Um, yeah, I don't believe I would be able to really I mean, again, I guess yeah, if I'm in like a center city in Oslo, if I were there on my own, I can navigate it. But as far as excursioning outside of town, no. I would be murdered in the street. So
I just went to Germany as a for the first
Oh,
time
nice.
ever as a tourist. I went
Oh
there by
shit.
yeah, I went there by myself, just to hang out with my friend Ralph, who also does this podcast with me. And
Oh,
there
sick.
was a music festival that he curates called Unholy Passion, and his band Ultha headlined it.
Oh, I know Ulsa.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
actually on my non-season of Mist albums. That would be in my top five
Oh
of
yeah,
non-season of Mist
it,
records of this year. Record is incredible. Matter of fact, I did not get to see them. They performed at a festival I was just at, Eindhoven Metal Meeting. But I mean, this is how you could tell this band stars on the rise. You couldn't get into the room. They played the small stage. So like I just gave up. I was like, I can't. It was like an oversold St. Vitus show in there. Like I'm
yeah,
I'm not going in. But
yeah.
anyway,
No, they're
sorry. So
they're
yeah, so you just went
fantastic,
to
man.
Germany.
They're great. Yeah, great
They're
band.
in- incredible. I digress. You were saying you went to
Yeah.
Germany, you were hanging out with him.
Oh well. No, the interesting thing about it was that whenever I go on a plane to fly to Europe, I have like all these road cases, and I'm usually traveling with these like suspicious looking guys and stuff like that. And this time around, it was just me and like my bag, and I had already printed out my boarding pass, and like I just basically walked on the fucking plane. It's crazy.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it was like flawless, And I mean, I had to go through security, but I'm one of these guys who shows up at the airport like hours ahead of time. So
Oh my God, I'm the worst. I mean, I have this like I'm gonna jinx myself. I have like amazing travel juju. I don't know when it's gonna end. I know that my time is coming and I'm gonna be like one of those people right now who are like stranded in the middle of nowhere because I'm gonna experience like a Southwest Airlines type meltdown or something because I've had exceptionally good travel juju. Even like I mean, in the past, I would say like prior to like the 2019. Sure, I've had flights canceled or delayed or whatever, but going to Europe and especially these last few years, I have had so much luck. And I test that luck because especially when like I have to go to JFK all the time. In theory, that's 2 hours from here, but when you're going there during rush hour on a Monday night, um, and or on a Monday morning or whatever, and that could be a 4 hour drive with
oh
the
yeah,
traffic the way it
easily,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. And I will show up and I swear I'm always at my gate sometimes when the plane is boarding. I, usually right before it boards. It's amazing. I was the other morning, a couple of weeks ago when I was going, I think it was, yeah, on my flight to Denver. I showed up to the airport, look at my phone, my gate is boarding in 8 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, I got time for coffee. So I go and there's of course like there's one like coffee and breakfast spot that is just slamming. It's a local, it's called Columbe or Columbe, and it's a Philadelphia-based coffee company. and they're delicious. And they have a place right in Terminal A. So the line is bonkers because it's a morning flight and everyone's getting their good coffee. And I hear a woman on the line right in front of me going, "Oh, my flight boards in 8 minutes. Do I have enough time for a breakfast sandwich?" I'm like, "Oh, you're on the same flight as me. Yeah, you do. You're good." I'm like, oh, I ran to Jody, our friend Jody,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I ran to her in the airport. I'm like, yeah, my flight leaves in like a minute. Like I got to get to my flight in like 5 minutes. I got time to say hi to you. Oh my, I always test my luck. I mean, to be fair with international flights, it's not as bad as it sounds, but sometimes you don't realize when I'm like, I'm at the airport an hour early. Oh, it's going to take 45 minutes to get through security. And then my terminal's on the other side of the airport and I've got to run there carrying 2 bags. Like,
I'm the
but
worst, man.
yeah.
Like I you know,
No, you're doing the right thing. I'm the worst. I've made people late for flights. Like, yeah,
yeah. I just I'm always early pretty much everywhere I go
which you
anyway.
should be.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. But
I'm usually early everywhere I go, but I just hate being stuck in an airport and then I'm gonna have to be stuck on a plane and then I'm gonna be stuck on some other form of transportation. So I feel like I just have this like compulsion to eliminate as much time as possible from having to be in the airport.
on the way back from Europe, I was sitting next to a vegan lady.
Okay.
Like
Oh no.
this, I mean, you know how like you could just tell someone's gonna be a pain in the ass, like when you see them, you know.
Yes, yes, that's a real thing. Oh my God. I had this exact same conversation today with somebody else. Like you could just look at someone and just be like, I don't like you. I could just tell. Yes,
Like,
that's a real thing.
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm on the plane, and also another thing I started doing is as soon as they start boarding, I get on the plane. I don't, when they call the different sections or whatever,
Yeah.
I just walk on. I just go, and I'm like, stop me, like I just get on the
That's
plane.
good to know because I wasn't sure if they like can tell or not. If you're
No.
like, if they scan it and it's, oh, that's amazing to know. That's life-changing
Yeah.
information.
And especially like, because there's just in some places it's like a self-serve thing where you get your boarding pass and they scan it, and this little chute opens up and you walk on. So nowadays,
Oh, I've seen that. Yes.
yeah. So I just go on, right? So I'm on the plane early. I got my seat. I'm situated. I got my book out, and I see this fucking lady coming. I'm like,
Oh
man,
no.
she looks like a real pain in the ass, man. So she sits next to me. Excuse me. All that stuff. It's time for the meal, right? This is the flight from Switzerland to JFK. And
Okay, which airline was it, by the way? Was it Swiss Air?
it was
Because they've
Swiss
got
Air.
really good fucking. Yo, they got mad good food.
Yeah, they do. They do actually.
Yo, they do. Yes.
So it's time for meals, right? And so the guy comes
no.
around with the cart. He's like, do you want meat or non-meat? Right. So I took like the chicken or whatever it was, and she's like, excuse me, I tried to organize a a vegan meal, and Swiss Airlines failed to provide me with my vegan meal.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, of course you did. Like, of course. You probably had that same attitude when you were trying to work this thing out with somebody. So,
Right.
this guy's trying to like help her out. And he's like, well, the pasta doesn't have any meat in it. And he's like, well, is it vegan? He's like, and then she's like, oh, you don't know, do you? And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God. Yeah, because he's a chef and he prepared it. Oh my God.
I mean, this fucking guy is just doing his job, and you're the one with the, the crazy fucking dietary restraints that are probably, made up. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Like I'm sure this is not a health reason, and I'm sorry, but like if it were something like, look, it's gluten-free, I'm legit allergic to it. Like that's different.
Or nuts.
Or not. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
different. But it's like if this is a lifestyle choice, then you need to like prepare your own snacks or go buy something in the airport and bring it on the plane with you. And especially knowing that you were in Switzerland, they have a huge vegan like that. Like I've been to Switzerland as well. That's definitely another more progressive country where you could find a ton of vegan shit. Like if I go to a coffee shop, I'm lactose intolerant. And if I'm like, give me oat milk, almond milk, they always have it. Like Switzerland is a place. So there's no excuse for this lady. I'm sure there was a million vegan options she could have picked up in the airport and shut up. And again, it's not something that's going to kill her, like gluten-free or a peanut allergy.
So she's like, well, what can I get you? And she's like, can you give me some hot water? Right. So
Oh
the guy
no.
gives her like this cup of hot water, and she produces this bag of powder, some kind of vegan powder, and makes this like mush out of it, and that's what she ate on our flight.
Oh God. Have some self-respect, woman. You couldn't find like a fucking veggie and hummus platter. What are you doing with your life?
Piece of
Oh
bread,
my God.
maybe an apple or something like that.
Right? You couldn't find an apple, like a banana, something, lady. What are you doing? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
Oh.
I didn't really have too much conversation with her or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I have a new thing where now when I travel, I don't tell anyone that isn't like in my circle. Yes, even at like a fest, if it's just like a random fan, what I do for a living, I tell them I'm a makeup artist because twice in a row, once on my way back to the airport from when I was in Denver. And then right on the trip, right after that, on the plane on the way back, I had people like solicit me for like to help their like SoundCloud rapper
Oh wow.
careers. Like I was on my way to the airport and like the Uber I wasn't, I'm sorry, I was not using Uber. I don't want to endorse the wrong service. I was using Lyft in Denver because it was significantly cheaper and quicker. And I used the Lyft to get back to the airport. And everyone was just exceptionally friendly. And this guy's talking to me, and everyone asks, "What are you doing out here?" I tell him I'm here with the music festival, blah, 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 whatever. Oh, yeah, I work with some of these bands. Next thing you know, he's pitching me a SoundCloud rapper career. I'm like, I don't do anything with hip hop. I can't help you. I'm sorry. And he's like, well, maybe you know someone who can. I'm like, oh my God. And then the trip right after that, come back from Denver, go home, go to Eindhoven. On my way back from Eindhoven, this woman who happened to be very, very nice and funny enough, she was Eastern European, but she lived in Staten Island for like 20 years. And now she was living in like Brooklyn. She sits next to me. She's also a crazy cat lady. So we hit it off. We bond over that. Very, very nice woman. But then, so I don't expect this woman to pitch me her SoundCloud rap career. I did not see coming that she has a son with a SoundCloud
Oh
rapper. I'm like,
man.
no, no. And like, she was so nice. And I'm like, you know what? Here, give me. And she was also kind of more like, can you like knock some sense into him and tell him he's not going to make any money? And there's no, like, to be fair, she didn't want me to really help him with his career as much as she wanted me to talk him out of doing it. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Tell him to send me an email. And I gave my email address. I have many email addresses. So I gave like an innocuous one. And he emails and it's like, yo, my mom gave me your email. What's up? I'm like, I
Oh
can't. I
God, man.
can't. I'm like, this is the problem right here, dude. Oh my God. Yeah. SoundCloud. So that's my new thing now. I've decided, and people, when I travel, they ask me what I do. Oh, I'm a makeup artist because no one's going to be asking me to sign their SoundCloud rapper career or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's better to just keep to yourself on the plane, I think, in general.
I'm sorry, I don't like talking to people, especially coming back. I'm always so socially drained from whatever I was doing. The last thing I want to do is talk to someone. I just want to like listen to my podcast and zone out and sleep. I don't want to talk to anyone.
This past year was like a pretty insane year for music, though, in general, man. There's been like, there's been great metal records out and also, other stuff too. It's just like a pretty solid year, man.
Oh yeah, a lot of great tours. A lot of great records. This is also, I think, a very exciting year because this is the first year all the festivals came back.
Right.
And those I just felt a lot of the ones I went to felt bigger than ever. And then you got all these like weird anomalies, like the double Hellfest that happened this year and stuff. So I think in that sense too, things were really exciting and really healthy. And now there's a lot of bands kind of coming out of the woodwork and either reuniting or doing anniversary tours. So yeah, and next year is also I think going to be another really big year for music.
That's good to hear, because like during,
Yeah.
2020 and 2021, things seemed pretty dark,
I like was pretty optimistic in the beginning, and then like come like a point in 2021, I just felt like, Oh, okay. Shows are never coming back. Like I really started to get negative over it because it just felt like, what the hell? So once shows started really coming back and there were no issues and they were selling well and everything seemed to be going smoothly, I obviously had a lot more faith, and thankfully it seems, I mean, obviously stuff we just talked about before about why touring is a little complicated are residual effects of that. But I'd rather there be touring and it be a little bit harder and a little bit more expensive than not even having that option to pursue that if you wanted.
Yeah, I've been trying to go to see as much as I can. The last half of the year, pretty much the entire year actually. King Diamond, I went to go see. Not King Diamond,
Oh,
Merciful
right. I
Fate.
saw you
Yeah,
at Merciful
yeah,
Fate. That's right.
yep,
Yeah, we were at the same show.
yep,
That's right. Yep.
yeah. That's like big shows, small shows, like whatever. I just been going, and because I took it for granted, man. For years and years and years, I'd be really selective about like, I'm not gonna go, whatever. I'm just gonna stay home tonight. Now I'm like, gotta go out. If you don't
Yep.
go, if there's no people, then this stuff doesn't sustain itself.
I feel the same way. I feel like I was at more shows than ever. Same thing, festivals, more festivals than ever. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there were definitely some nights where I was just like, I just have to stay in because I
Yeah,
just can't push myself to go anymore. But any show I could actually be at, and there also too, unfortunately, there were shows like, to be fair, one show I wanted to go to more than anything was to see Rammstein, but tickets were fucking insane. Like for shitty seats, it was unreasonable. Like it was just like, you know what? I've seen them before. I was in the Fiora zone. It was amazing. I'll see them again. So there were some obstacles rather, where like I just couldn't go because I couldn't afford it. But for the most part, it was like, yeah, you know what? I've never heard of this band, but it's just a night out to support some music. I'll fucking rally and I'll come to that.
I have to give my top 10 over to our friend Jackie's podcast. So
Oh, nice,
yeah, so
nice.
that's
I'm
gonna be
excited to hear that.
it's gonna be featured. It was hard. It was very hard to come up with 10 records. I had to really put my thinking cap on to figure out, because I had a list of like 30 records. As the year went by, I kept writing down records that I thought were sick, and I'm
Yep.
like, man, who? It was such. I need some runner ups. You know what I mean? I can't just like not give propers to these other bands who put out these great records somehow.
I feel the exact same way. I mean, it narrowed it down that we could only pick from the season of Miss Pool for the one we just did for the label.
Right.
But even then, and we were only supposed to do three. I had to do five. And the way I see it, it's not even like a top this one, because if I could do a top, then I could have just done three. You know what I mean? But I was like, I can't pick one of these records over the other because all five of these have spoken to me. And it was even hard to narrow it down to five because there was some other, like the Woods of Desolation record we put out. I think that record's brilliant. And I really grappled with that. Like, but I'm like, I just can't be obnoxious and do six because then I'm going to have to do 10. And then that's pretty much everything that came out this year, and then so it was just so hard. And that's just from the label side. And then I look at the stuff that is outside of that and records I did not work this year. And that's a whole big pool to choose from as well. So I say I'm going to do it every year and then I get overwhelmed because the same with you. It's just, especially this year, so many great records that came out. What would you say if you had though, like a definitive, like top three or five, or like anything you could single out? Would you say that there's anything like that that's really, you could just single out as one of your definitive favorites?
Yeah, the Goat Whore record that came out this year.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's unofficially. that's
Right.
that's definitely
Unofficially.
in one of my top. That's definitely up there for me. The Blue Dowse Nord record that came out.
That record's incredible. Easily in my top records as well.
The Immolation record that came out way in the beginning of the year that we almost forgot about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of that too, where records that I'm like, that came out this year. We just had that with Gordon, where I'm like, I said something about a boss being on an end of the year list. He goes, what record? He came out with a record this year. It was like, yeah, it was in February or March. Everyone, like, it feels like a lifetime ago.
What I'm really looking forward to, and hopefully this happens someday, is Galdsveer doing a new LP.
Oh, let's talk. I got so much good stuff to tell you. I've got a
Wow.
lot of good stuff to tell you. I mean, Goals Weird will do something. It will be slow to come together because there's some other things that Christian is working on right now. That one of which, like, I want to text you. No, I'm not. Okay. As soon as we get off the phone, you have to tell me, and I have to text you because he's got a lot of stuff going on, including like an unnamed new project.
Oh.
But there's something else happening in the mix that's really big. Yeah, so you're gonna get that wish and so much more. But unfortunately, I don't see that coming out. I don't see that being completed until the earliest end of this year, let alone being released next year, like 2024 rather.
Yeah. Well, it's worth the
Yeah,
wait, you know. It's
it is. And
I
when
mean,
you find out what's in line before that, you'll also understand why.
I have to say I think that might be one of my favorite things that the label has put out in the last few years is the output of Sphere, definitely, you know.
Awesome. I still really want to get you guys to talk to each other because I think you would have a really insightful conversation with him, especially not even just about music, but just philosophically and about life. I mean, he's definitely not the character like you could talk to about slasher films,
No, I
but
didn't think so.
yeah, but he's definitely someone you can talk to and have really, he's not a man of many words, but he's careful of what he says and what he thinks, and it makes what he says very meaningful. And I think you would just coming from as a fan and having very similar appreciation for music and art, and I think you guys would really have a great chat.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of respect for him and all I mean all of his bands, Treldom, you know, and the work he did in Gorgoroth, you know, all that stuff is great, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's an icon. He really is.
Well,
But yeah,
Katie,
I'm glad he did that. That's also one of my favorites. But yeah, I know this has been great. By the way, I could talk to you forever.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, it's been a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
you know, we're recording this. It's before New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, so Happy New Year.
Yes. Happy New Year.
You know, and hope to see you sooner than later. Okay.
I'm sure we will. We'll definitely be in touch. I'm going to send you a text about exciting goal related news. And take care of yourself, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been awesome. And, I'm always down to chat. I
All
could
right.
talk the air out of a room, and I always enjoy chatting with you.
All right,
All
Katie.
right.
Take care now. Bye.
You too, man. Bye bye.